The name of my presentation is PFOA and PFOS effects on fertility and fetal development. Per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, aka PFAS, are a group of man-made chemicals that have been used in industry and consumer products since the 1940s. They can be found in drinking water and in products we use in everyday life, such as non-stick pans, paint, and cleaning products. Perfluorooctanoic acid, aka PFOA, and perfluorooctane sulfonate, aka PFOS, are the two most popular types of PFAS. PFOA and PFOS are called legacy PFAS due to their long half-lives and how persistent they are in the environment. PFAS chemicals are known to have harmful effects on human health, and they have been identified as contaminants of concern for reproductive toxicity. For example, in women, it can target the ovary and alter the normal function of reproduction by changing hormone secretion and menstrual cycles. And in men, it can lower testosterone levels and have a negative effect on semen quality. For my capstone paper, I did a systematic review. 7 studies were found using 3 search engines, PubMed, Medline, and ScienceDirect, using key search terms. A meta-analysis was conducted on PFOA's impact on fertility, separate from the analysis of the fetal development outcomes. Odds ratios and confidence intervals were used to determine if PFOA and or PFOS had an effect on an outcome. And for the meta-analysis, the odds ratios directions were reversed so that an OR over 1 always meant an outcome was present. So for the study characteristics, study participants were either male or female from different parts of the world. Sample sizes varied from 120 people to over 48,000. Age, BMI, and socioeconomic characteristics were controlled for in almost all the studies. Age is a very important co-founder as it plays a big role in fertility and reproduction. And socioeconomic characteristics are also important because there's social determinants of health included in that category. The I2 value measure of heterogeneity for the meta-analysis was only 23%, which was not important. This slide shows the exposure levels of PFOA for the fertility analysis. The lowest exposure was 0.701 and the highest was 397.7 amongst the means. So the exposure varied greatly and were very sporadic. And for the fetal development analysis exposure levels, it's the same thing. Exposures varied greatly. Lowest value was 0.05 and the highest was 36.0 amongst the means. This slide shows PFOA's impact on fertility. The table to the right shows the odds ratios for the outcomes each study measured. Most of the studies used tertiles. So we use the highest tertile, which is tertile 3, versus the reference tertile, which is tertile 1. Only 2 of the studies, Ma and Zhang, showed a statistically significant relationship with their outcomes. The meta-analysis, which is to the left, had a random combined effect size of 1.40 with 95% confidence intervals of 0.83 to 1.96. This showed some sort of effect, but not a major one. This slide shows PFOA and PFOS impact on fetal development. So the table shows the ORs for fetal development outcomes that they measured. Tertiles are used in these studies as well. Only one study had a statistically significant association with the outcome measured, and that was Waterfeld. To summarize my discussion, findings from previous systematic reviews are very similar to this one. The data and findings are inconsistent. The meta-analysis on fertility showed that PFOA has some sort of effect, however, it's not statistically significant. For fetal development, only one study showed that PFOA and PFOS had a significant effect on the birth outcomes they measured. There were other PFAS types that did show they had an impact on fertility and fetal development. However, they would have to be further assessed separate from this paper since I only focused on PFOA and PFOS. Key limitations: length of exposure was unknown. This could explain why studies with the highest amount of exposure had no significant associations with their outcomes versus studies with lower exposure that did. We just don't know how long participants were exposed. The amount of study participants were drastically different. Amount of exposure varied among studies, and PFAS effects can rely heavily on dose response. Key strengths: the paper focused on the 2 most common types of PFAS. Only peer-reviewed studies were used, and specific search phrases were used in specific search engines. In conclusion, PFOA and PFOS effects on fertility and fetal development need to continue to be studied and evaluated to gain a better understanding of its true impact. Thank you.